This episode is brought to you by Love Hurts. Kiwi Kwan has had quite a career, from childhood roles in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Goonies to a recent Academy Award win for Everything Everywhere All at Once. But now Ki finally stars as a leading man in the film Love Hurts. Love Hurts is the perfect date night movie with its mix of over-the-top action, comedy, and a ton of heart. Love Hurts, only at theaters February 7th.
Don't miss out on the final football game of the season with Prize Picks. Join now because Prize Picks are giving away a free pick for the big game where 1 yard equals 1 win. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Download the Prize Picks app and use code FIELD and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FIELD on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise podcast. It's time to remember this crap with the winner of the most popular co-host on the 2022 Discipio Pointless Exercise Readers Listeners Poll, Mike Donahue. Mike, how are you?
In case there was any evidence required is to demonstrate the end of civilization, I would say that would be it. I humbly accept and just want to know, I'm good, by the way, Andy, but just what in the hell is wrong with all you people? I can't stand listening to myself, but hey, happy to sit back and entertain. But yeah, I mean, I listen. Dave Brown, he's like a professional writer. He is a professional writer. He's good. You know, he's got contacts. He's entertaining. He remembers some good crap too. Yep. That's who I voted for. But yeah, I'm no offense to the listeners who have awarded me such a distinction, but have you checked your meds?
I have responded to the results of the poll by firing all the other co-hosts because clearly I need to find better ones. So sorry guys, but you're all out.
I'm the Johnny Morris of Second Banana.
That's not true. Mike Pusteri is back next week, 2 weeks. With our Bear podcast starts again.
Oh, the Bears. Yeah.
No, Dave, I believe we're going to do a baseball podcast next week, which are a couple weeks off. He went on vacation, and I outed the fact he was on vacation, so I got to check and make sure his house didn't get robbed while
you didn't say where, though. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter where he was going.
All right,
it matters where he lives. He doesn't live in Chicago, so maybe there were people, David Browns all over Chicagoland got their houses broke into because of this podcast, and it wasn't even the right guy.
Former New York Giant quarterback.
Next week, I think we haven't officially scheduled it yet, but he wants to do it. Drew Lawrence from The Guardian, guy who used to write for Discipio back when he was a University of Missouri college student, where he went to school with Kelly Dwyer.
Kelly went to you in Columbia? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Drew Lawrence and I are going to talk F1, and we're going to talk about the NFL. He actually covers the F1 for real, and I have become one of those annoying bandwagon fans, and I've got a lot. It's a sport that are ripe to be made fun of, and I have a lot of theories I want to run by Drew. I think it'll be fun.
There are more Formula One fans than I would have guessed, to confirm. So
it's a really easy, cool sport to watch. Everybody drives a car, so you know exactly. I know what they're doing. I mean, it's just like me driving around Rockford,
right?
And there's 10 teams. There's 20 drivers, so it's pretty quick to learn who everybody is. And it's just it's like watching a video game because there's fucking cameras everywhere. It's amazing all the places they have cameras, and it's all the real time like diagnostics and stuff. You can see how fast they're going and see all the stuff. And it takes you about 2 races to figure out who everybody is and how it all works, and then you just watch it. And the appeal to me is that it's on in the morning before all the real sports start.
Because in Europe,
yeah. So I get up, I'm around. Hey, I'll watch it. And the races are short. This is one of the secrets of the sport. Not only they're all under 2 hours, but there's also they literally set a time limit, and they will, if they're starting to go over for any reason because of delays or caution flags or whatever, they shorten the race. Now they do it because these people put the minimum amount of fuel in the car as possible. They try to keep it as light as possible, and you do not refuel. It's not like an IndyCar thing or NASCAR where you're sticking the thing in the top of the car and whatever. Yeah, the amount of fuel you start the race with is what you get for the whole race. And so that's another thing. It's like watching soccer where it's 2 hours, you're done.
So will a car just run out of gas sometimes?
It happens, and they have it calibrated so much that there was a race where one of the guys was winning, and because there had been 2 cautions, the announcers were worried he was going to run out of gas because he'd driven like 3 extra laps, even though he'd driven at half speed. They're like, I wonder if he's got enough fuel left. I'm like, Jesus, how close are they cutting this shit? Well, that's how close they're cutting it. So that'll be fun.
I believe there's a Netflix series. I started watching it a while back.
That's how I got into it. During the pandemic, like everybody else, it's called Drive to Survive. I think there's 4 seasons of it. And you get to meet all the people, and then like the cocky asshole who runs the Red Bull team, Christian Horner. They showed him on his ranch, and I'm like, I'm looking at his cute redheaded wife, and I'm like, that looks like Ginger Spice. Well, it is. That's
how about that?
These guys are all insanely rich, so of course.
Yeah.
And then there's the stereotypical German Toto Wolff, who looks like he just got discharged from the Luftwaffe, and he runs the Mercedes team, and
and of course it's the Mercedes team, straight out of Central Cast.
Crazy Gunther, who runs Haas, and he always says the wrong, like horribly offensive shit to his drivers, and then Gunther Steiner, and it's fine. There's a guy who runs Alpine not Otto. Stuff. I can't pronounce his last name. It's got a Z thrown at it. It sounds like he's like the most like European guy ever, and then you talk to him. And you realize he grew up in America, and he went to Wayne State University. So there's all kinds of weird connections. So anyway, we'll talk more about F1 than we probably should on this. Remember This Crap F1 edition. Come on soon.
How about that?
I won't be able to do it because I can only remember back like 2 years. So it'd be hard to do that.
Agreed.
I can wax nostalgic about Jackie Stewart.
That's right. Your AJ Foyt, or I don't know. I can only go back to IndyCar. I don't know Formula. Jackie Stewart would be the only international driver from.
Jackie was an F1.
Yeah.
Remember my dad.
Well, like Mario Lemieux though, like those guys that raced at Indy, a lot of those guys were F1 too. Right?
I don't think Mario Lemieux.
I'm sorry, Jesus.
Mario Andretti. He won the F1 championship one year.
Got it.
And didn't even race all the races. That's how good Mario Andretti.
Was he Italian or an Italian American? I can't remember now.
His
son was Michael. He was also a racer.
I don't. It's funny because I looked at his Wikipedia page not long ago just to see all the shit he did, because he was at he was at the race in Florida.
So they do race in the States.
I think he was born in Italy and came over as a kid.
So largely Americanized, but
yes, mostly Americanized. He was
culturally still very Italian. Yeah. Mario Andretti.
Yeah. Well, I remember my dad talking about we'd be watching like an IndyCar race. He'd be like, these Europeans when they pit stops, they get out of the car, they have tea,
have a cigarette.
They're not in a hurry. And I'm like, okay, that's like when they do Le Mans. Yes. Not when they're just running like 150 miles. They're not getting out of the car, taking a like it's funny that the pit stops in F1, the announcers would be like, "Oh, that was a slow one," and it's like 2.7 seconds.
It's crazy.
Like 2.4 seconds. It's like, okay, but it's funny. You watch a few races and you can tell. Like you're like, "Oh, that was a slow one," and then it's like 2.9 seconds. So.
And you can see like the body language of like the crew bitching at each other.
Oh, that's the best part of the races are how much of the
right
from either the principal, that's a guy like Christian Horner, or whoever they're like. Everybody has a guy they're talking to, and how much of that stuff you get to hear, and how much bitching that the drivers do, and they're yelling about stuff, and when you hear this little sound, and then that there's going to be audio, and then if you play the F1 game on Xbox or PlayStation, and it's the same announcers, it's the same sounds, it's the exact same views.
They're really
because the whole race is like a video
media.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to fall into that shit. So
cool.
Anyway, so Drew's going to come out. We're going to talk about that. And I'm going to ask about moving from South Carolina to Georgia and how the movers tried to rip him and his wife off. He was tweeting about that. That'll be
all right. Look forward to it. Maybe I'll finish the Netflix series and start watching Formula One.
You should. They just finished summer break. They're in Belgium.
Well, they're in a Belgian environment.
Yeah. All right, but that's not what this podcast is. This is Remember This Crap. And we are running out of Cubs seasons to remember. And like I wrote in the column today, there are people that I've got messages from people very worried that we're running out of Cubs seasons. I'm like, that doesn't mean we're running out of crap. It just means that your crazy idea where we had to do every season from 1980 to 2011 is coming to a close.
Just felt the urge.
There will be other things to remember.
Right. I just felt the urge to once and for all firmly categorize and in sort of discrete form each season, 32 years. But that's only 32 years that, we touch upon various seasons when we go on digressions. And there are, of course, many more seasons beyond even this scope. And yeah, like you said, I mean, they're easy shoot-offs. There's so much crap in so many decades here that I don't think anyone needs to concern themselves about us running out of material.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could do player-centric ones. Like, remember this crap? Who wouldn't want to remember all the stuff about Jason Hayward? Wouldn't that be fun?
Well, that's an interesting one. In all seriousness, we've teased the breakdown of the really baffling void in center field. That's been really largely without one blip from 50 years ago, a 75-year drought. So, we could break it down by position. We could do some manager shows.
You got to hurry up before Pete Crow Armstrong shows up and nails that down for the next 18 years.
That'll be the guy.
Although the reality is, if he comes up and he's good, and 6 years later he's gone, he'll be
right. Easy. It's a low bar, folks. We're only talking. Rick Monday is the last center fielder to merely have at least four consecutive seasons with 125 or more starts in center field.
It's a bar so low that if Nick Madrigal tried to walk under it, he would have to duck.
Might break his nose.
That's how low it is.
So, but yeah, as far as this 32-year wheel, we're down to the final four. So a little bit of a mixed bag.
People thought we'd never do it. And here we are on the precipice.
Almost there. Knock on wood. 84, 87, 2004, 2006.
You want to talk some Dusty?
Well, wait, which Dusty? We've already identified there are two.
Oh, that's right. You want to talk end Dusty?
Or the beginning of the end of Dusty?
2006.
Ooh.
You got 5 fun facts.
Fun.
5 facts at least about the 2006 Cubs.
Yeah, not much fun. Let's just start with opening day because they always spring to mind, especially in this era in which Carlos Zambrano usually got his tits lit up, and he did yet again in Cincinnati. 2006 was the year that Juan Pierre came in, hit 9,000 ground balls to second base, and still had the nerve to become the first Cub since Ryan Sandberg to collect 200 hits, which was he was awful, and yet he did that. And it still baffles me. 2006 was there were in each Cubs Sox series there were 2 interesting things that happened. One in Comiskey Park on a sacrifice fly on a play that started with Rich Hill still pitching, and I forget Carlos Lee or no, he was long gone. But sac fly in a Cubs Sox game at Comiskey on a Saturday afternoon resulted in AJ Pierzynski knocking over Michael Barrett and then starting a brouhaha. I'm sure we'll go into that in the other Cubs Sox game. That's what it was. That's right. That's all it was. In the other Cubs Sox game in which I attended, and if you want to go on my Twitter profile and see me wearing a bag on my head, it happened when our good friend Ryan Dempster served up a 2-out lead-changing go-ahead home run to Pierzynski at Wrigley Field in the top of the 9th inning. In a game in which the Cubs snatched victory or defeat from the jaws of victory. And let's see, fact number 5, well, you mentioned Johnny B. Baker. It began or it ended the, I wouldn't say long, torturous 4-year run. It's amazing it was only 4 years. It was really torturous for the last 2 and 2 months, or maybe 2.5. But yeah, Dusty Baker's final season. And, just another low point on the heels of another high point. So swiftly, it seems to be the Cubs' fortunes. That's it.
There was also a night. All that bad shit used to happen at Dodger Stadium, too. Night in Dodger Stadium where an errant throw led Derrek Lee to stick his arm right in front of you probably drunk. Why not? He usually was. Rafael Furcal, who snapped his wrist and ruined
Still
his
not
season.
the guy that I'm most angry at for that play is the guy that I will be angry at for a lot of things. Worthless sack of shit, Scott Ayer. He's the one that made the lousy throw to begin with, I believe, or couldn't get it off the mound.
If it wasn't, it should have been.
Because Lee was coming off one of the most phenomenal individual seasons in Cubs history, including Sammy's 97, 96 to 03 run. Lee was a legitimate MVP candidate in his second full season with the Cubs. Had made us all forget Hee-Seop Choi for a long time.
It took a while.
Finally. And it was in early May, right? It was it shouldn't be too hard to find. It was a Dodger series in Chavez Ravine. And I don't know. Did the Cubs get off to because the 05 Cubs, see, Dusty's legacy, I mean, his standards just kept lowering. He comes in, as you chronicled when I first followed you in 03 at the convention, he came in high and it just got better until it started to crash. And it just got to a point where, everything he did early on, obviously just seemed to work. And then until it didn't.
It all worked.
And I get verklempt sometimes thinking about how quickly it turned.
So Derrek Lee was a famously slow starter, to the point where I used to joke they should give him a calendar that just went right to May, like went March, May. And so in 2006, following up Bob Nightingale is clearly watching Cardinal games pantsless these days. And getting very excited about Paul Goldschmidt maybe winning a Triple Crown. Yeah, Goldschmidt's having a good year. It's nothing compared to Derrek Lee's 2005 season.
Is that right?
Yeah. And 2006, Derrek, could he do it again? On the 19th of April, he was batting .318 with a .448 on base and a .614 slugging percentage, a 1.062, and in the 7th inning of a game against the Dodgers, he was 1 for 3 in the game, and the Cubs were winning. And Rafael ran into him, and we wouldn't see him again until June the 25th. And then that really didn't work out very well. He came back too soon, and then he was gone again from July 23rd until August 28th.
Just a disaster.
He only played 50 games. It ruined his entire season.
I can't even think offhand who largely was the replacement for him. God, 06?
Todd
06
Walker.
was,
Todd Walker replaced him in that game.
Moving over from second base.
Yeah.
Wow.
John Mabry was on the team. Could have got a lot of John Mabry.
Big, bad John Mabry. No, not that. Not John Mayberry.
Let's see who threw the year. Scotty Ayer was in the game.
Well, he was the guy on the mound. And I remember, Scott Ayer. Well, I remember what I was going to complain about was that Dusty started high, and then it got so bad that after 2004 crash, which we'll go into great detail one of these next few weeks, that in 2005, when they were just listless all season, we covered that season, but they were in contention, Matt Lawton, Jody Garrett, that he was trying to hang his hat at the end of his third season in 05. He would be, because in 04 was the first time in our lifetime the Cubs had successive 500 seasons. Right? Yes, I know that's true. And that Dusty was really gunning for that third consecutive 500 season. I'm like, what do you care about that for? Like, shit's falling apart, and now that's what you're going to hang your hat on. And so they didn't get it, and I was kind of happy about it, Frank, because we were all fed up with Dusty by the end of 05, and it comes back one more in 06. The season kind of feels like it was dead on arrival. Although I look at it, they were, over 500 early, but they were, you said that Dodgers game was actually in the third week, so obviously had an impact. Cubs were still only 8-4 going into it, but
they won 8-5. They won that night. They were 9-5.
Oh,
they were on pace for, I don't know math real well, 154 wins. Is that how the pace works? Another guy who filled in for Derrek Lee is a current major league manager.
Current major league manager.
Yeah,
I got nothing.
It's easy to forget that he's a major league manager. He replaced Joe Madden with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim.
Who is that? Who is that?
He traded himself to the Twins during the season.
Nevin.
Phil Nevin.
Right.
And now it's time. I'll tell the story once again. My wife and I had dinner with Len Casper, and we were talking, and my wife was asking, crazy shit because she doesn't know anything about sports, and she's like, "Is there a player? Has there ever been a Cub player that you just hate?" And Len looks at me and goes, "You can't write this," and he said it was Phil Nevin.
And you're revealing it now because you haven't written it.
I've been revealing it for years now.
Well, at this point,
once Phil was no longer a player, I figured it was probably safe to.
I'm sure Len can own up to it anyway.
And Len, I don't know what Len does anymore, right? He's quit the business.
Right. He's certainly not coming across to any American League teams. Len's built up enough currency where he could probably stand by it. It's amazing they give him a manager's job. Does he even wear an undershirt yet? Wasn't that the other thing that Phil Nevin with the Cubs? He just kind of. Was that not it? Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else.
It probably was. He was such a
just looking like a slob. Yeah.
He wears number 88, and it's funny.
As a manager, Is that the year he was the top pick in the draft? No, that was 93. I think.
I wore 88 when I played high school football. That was my number.
Were you a tight end or wide receiver? You have a skill position.
I was. We ran the wing tee. I was an extra tackle, basically, because we threw the ball about 9 times a year, but when they did, they threw it at me. And so my license plates used to have my name and 88 on them until I was far too old to still be driving around. But I just kept renewing the license plate. When I went to Michigan, then I actually got the same license plate. And now I don't have those license plates anymore because I found out that white supremacists have adopted
88, really?
88 as a white supremacist thing. It's the H is the 8th letter of the alphabet, and they think 88 stands for Heil Hitler. So I no longer will wear 88. And Phil Nevin wears 88 for the Angels. I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
Interesting. Do these Aryan Brotherhoods also drive around in Delta Olds? Is that do they identify the Delta Olds 88?
I feel bad if you see a bunch of guys wearing Desmond Clark uniforms this year at Bears games, it's probably up to no good.
Yeah.
Poor Dez.
Yeah.
It's not my fault. That's the number they gave me.
I guess that is the first 88 I think of. Was Marcus Robinson 88?
The Kaz. Glenn Kozlowski. That's the first 88 you think of. Patrick Kane.
Yeah. I was thinking Union football players. Sorry.
No scabs allowed.
Right. Somehow, I filter my sports information through who's in the players' union.
That's why you. When I tell the my famous Damian Miller story, you won't even listen to it. Turn the microphone off.
Right. Exactly.
All right. Let's see who did Phil Nevin. Let's see how good a trade. When we say Phil Nevin traded himself, like I like to joke that Greg Maddux traded himself to the Dodgers for Cesar.
Same season, right? Greggy started the season in the Cubs roster, right?
Scott Boras did that. Like that was really a thing. And Hendry said, if you want to find a trade, find a place where Greg wants to go, I'll help facilitate it. And Boras wanted him to go to the Dodgers, so they made that trade. The Nevin trade, Nevin was actually got permission from the Cubs to call other teams, and he worked out the deal directly. The Twins. And I had to see who they got. Dun, dun, dun. Where is it? Dun, dun, dun. August 31st. Oh, it was a waiver deal. So they got quality players back. They got Adam Harbin. Now the Cubs traded
Adam Harbin. Isabel.
The Cubs traded for Phil in May to try to fill the void. They got it from the Rangers, who they traded him for a player on their big league roster. 1-for-1.
Oh God!
Infielder for infielder.
A guy. You expect me to recognize this? A Ranger that came over to the Cubs in 06?
No, Phil came from the Rangers. Cubs traded this guy to the Rangers for Phil
him.
Nevin. He was part of a huge trade just the offseason before.
I got nothing.
Jerry Hairston Jr.
Oh.
Well, 2 off seasons before. The off season before, after 04.
Right.
For
the Sammy Sosa
Samuel
trade.
Peralta Sosa. And the trade worked out so well, they managed to flip it for Phil Nevin, and then they managed to turn that in. They turned Sammy Sosa into Adam Harbin. Good job.
It's like, nice. It's like ever since that Nomar trade, which again we'll cover when we do both 2004, they were the most, like Jim Hendry made the most uninspiring deadline deals or of course Hairston was not a deadline deal, that was off season, but I'm thinking of that, like Matt Lawton was the deadline deal, and no, he wasn't. They got him earlier, but then they traded for Jody Garrett, who was like he played against Hairston in high school.
It was the opposite. It was a masterpiece. He traded for Garrett for like a week. And then Lawton, and the Cubs went so bad so fast, he traded Lawton at the actual deadline. And then Lawton went to the Yankees and flunked a steroid test and couldn't play for the Yankees.
Yep.
It's good stuff. The Jim Hendry Cubs. What I wouldn't give to have him back. Man.
Yeah. Well, this is Jim Hendry, who would still get like 5 or 6 more cracks at the apple, right? Like his 2003-4 team with Dusty was turning the dust. No pun intended. But he would still be allowed to keep, because there was at the end of this is really the last, in my book, the last season of the so-called mediocrity by design. This Tribune run, beginning with the year that they fired Jim Fry all the way up and through here, where it was so embarrassing. And this is when Dennis Fitzsimmons was forced out. McPhail was forced out at the end of it. It was like, all right, we've milked this as much as we can. It's embarrassing. We're trying to sell this team, which they would do to Sam Zell. But not, they were still Tribune owned in 07, 08, and 09, I believe. But they had a different ownership, so it was kind of a different. They had gone a different direction. But Henry survived that. He kind of crossed the chasm from that sort of 15-year management style of the Tribune company. It almost paid off in 03 when a 88-win team went all the way, but they finally sort of pulled the plug after the season. After they fired McPhail, that's when they signed Soriano. Because they were trying to pump up the value of the team. But it is funny just to picture Henry after everything had just turned to dust from 2 years prior, and it's when you rank the 10 worst Cubs seasons of this period, this season is one of them, and it's just bizarre that it's in between.
Yeah.
And just a couple years on either side, 2 playoff teams.
Well, and it really is. It's a line of demarcation, because it's the end. Hendry got to build 2 pretty distinct teams in relatively short order. He had the Dusty Cubs, and then followed immediately by Lou, and that team had, obviously there's crossover, but most of that roster was different. I mean, by the time Lou got him, Kerry Wood is a reliever. And Mark
was refashioned.
Gone, and Derrek Lee was there. There's a fair amount of 04 Cubs.
Well, Lee,
still around
Lee was 04, but Lee wasn't on the 03 Cubs.
Right.
But the 04 was equally competitive on paper. So
I mean, the whole thing fell apart. When they got rid of Randall Simon. I mean, we can all agree on that.
Well,
he was the glue that was holding that team together.
They just couldn't stand alongside him when he was facing those charges in Milwaukee.
Yep. He wanted the Cubs to kick in for his defense fund, and they said, "No, you got to go away." Then.
Right. But you're right. They were distinct era. You're right. There's a lot of the DNA was similar, but it was not a continuation. It was a reset, because that first team, the nucleus, was the starting pitching, and it just crumbled. And then they had young talent, like Lee and Ramirez were young, and so it kind of flipped the script a little bit, and they. They were spending, on Soriano was the big spend, but they would bring in Fukudome. But the pitching was completely different. Like you said, Kerry Wood was repurposed. It was pretty distinct. I mean, especially when things go to dust in 06, the fact that he was even around to build it up again. But I think because we all rightfully pinned a lot of the failure in 06 on Dusty. It just at the end of 04, from that point forward, he just didn't take accountability, and he seems like he was cashing a check. I know it sounds harsh, but he was a different guy than he was the first year and 2/3.
Now, one of my all-time favorite Cubs was also they didn't just get Juan Pierre to round out their outfield that offseason. They went out and they got a great right fielder, all around stud. Great
terrified
arm.
Terrified worms all over the world.
Had that great arm, and he was such a disciplined hitter at the plate. They got Jock Jones.
Yes.
What I remember about that was I was going down to Florida to see my mom and dad for a week, and I bought the book. What's it called? Fantasy Land, I think maybe. And it's about fantasy baseball. This guy who was writing about, it was a sports writer who was writing about fantasy baseball and who would actually talk to players about it. And there's a whole chapter where he talks to Jock Jones. And he's basically talking about how Jock is a player whose limited real life baseball skills didn't translate very well at all to fantasy because the game was shifting to guys who got on base more and could steal base. He didn't fill very many categories, but to a casual baseball fan, they'd look at the end of the year and he'd have like 20 homers and 80 RBIs. They'd be like, "Oh, that Jock's pretty good." But in reality, he wasn't. And of course, I'm reading this like, "Oh, of course, that's the guy the Cubs got."
Yeah.
And when we got him, the thing that stuck out immediately was anytime there was he had to hurry a throw in right field, he would spike it into the ground.
Well, that's why I said worms all over the world. He was a worm burner extraordinaire.
We joked about it a lot, but it happened a lot. Like, you could count on it. The ball, like, bouncing into the infield. And it's like, Jesus Christ, Jock. And he was kind of a dick. I mean, he had been a real asshole to the sports writers asking him questions.
He was kind of a defensive, kind of a prickly dude.
Yeah.
And then, when he wasn't able to fight his own fights, mom was in the stands taking it up for him.
That's right. Well, think about how popular, how much Marquis would love him. Because they could mic mom up in the stands for every game, and she'd come down and yell at the other pitchers for throwing too close to her Jock.
Right, and some of the fans for criticizing him for another 30-foot throw. She might get her own spinoff on Marquis.
And it's funny because he had a perfect Jock Jones season in 2006. We know from watching the games that he was basically a non-factor. Like and at the end of the year, he hit 27 homers, 81 RBIs, and he had 285.
I never would have guessed that. I didn't think he was that productive.
And you're like, hey. When
wow.
Dusty showed up, Dusty had much less use for Jock the next year when Lou showed up than Dusty did. And
yes.
Jock got run late in the season playing center field. Because yet another year where the Cubs didn't have a center fielder.
Well, early in the season, because the Soriano experiment was aborted pretty right. Jock, I would have thought in 07 was the primary center fielder. It comes back to, like you said, Pierre is the one guy for this year. He did get 200 hits, but he still infuriated me because he was a guy that slapped a few big triples in the 2003 LCS against the Cubs. And then he was cold as shit to start. And when they got buried, he just seemed like it angers me that he was allowed to get 200 hits because he must have had, did he even bat 300?
No.
9,000 at-bats. Yeah. How do you get 214 hits and not hit 300? You can fucking swing at everything and hit the ball to the second baseman. Sometimes you beat it out, asshole.
Yeah, 292 with a 330 on base.
And
388 slug. But he was fast. So he's basically Nick Madrigal with speed. And think about how useless that is. And now I have Nick Madrigal without speed, which is what the Cubs do have.
Then you have
That's
Nick
how
Madrigal.
useful he is. And speaking of Len Casper, now Len loved Juan. They had been together with the Marlins, and he was always extolling Juan's virtues about what a hard worker he was, and the fact that Juan would come out to the park early before the first game of the series, and he would check the slope of the foul lines by quote unquote rolling his balls down the foul lines. Which didn't actually mean his testicles, I don't think. I think they actually would roll baseballs down to see how they would roll.
Right. He might get a citation for that.
I always loved the vision of Jock heading out early in the morning to roll his balls down the foul lines.
Right. Like, you think Moises Alou's pregame habits are weird? Check this out.
Now, one thing Juan didn't do is Juan never struck out. This is impressive, actually.
Is it Gracian?
In 699 at-bats, how many times do you think Juan Pierre struck out?
Well, the way you phrase it, I'm going to try to nail it because I'm thinking it's obviously low. Is it 50?
38 times.
Damn.
And he only hit into 6 double plays.
Because he's fast. All right. So it has a player like that obviously has value, but
he stole 58 bases in 78 attempts.
So even by
but he was not. Metrics, but he wasn't really valuable. I mean, there were a lot of empty stats on this team. Jock's 25 homers that didn't mean anything. Juan's 58 stolen bases that didn't mean shit. A guy hitting 292 but only walking 32 times for an entire. So the 38 strikeouts in 699 at bats. That's impressive. 32 walks in 699 at bats for your leadoff hitter is insane. I mean, that's like at least Corey Patterson, when he did hit the ball, hit it hard.
Yeah.
They couldn't say that for Juan.
Nope.
And who did they trade for him? They gave up real.
Who did they trade for to get Pierre?
Yeah. Actually, in hindsight, this was fine. They traded 3 pitchers for him. Perpetual prospects, 2 of them, Ricky Nolasco and Raynel Pinto, and then a guy who we dare not speak his name anymore, Sergio Mitre.
Yeah, we do not, but got you. That's right. I would have remembered that. I remember.
And so I will advise you. He came up yesterday on Twitter.
Last week he came. We came up in our podcast.
We were tweeting about him for some reason yesterday. I just warned people: do not Google what he's up to these days. At least don't do it.
Seriously, don't.
We ran the same thing with Barkevius Mingo with the Bears.
I know. Yeah, I know. I can't remember Mingo's now. I'll look it up, but I can't think anything is worse than Mitre.
Very similar.
Did the person die?
Yeah, I think so.
Because Mitre's is okay. Oh, wow. Okay. I have to go back then. Somehow I've washed away the Mingo one.
So if you look at
the subject.
If you look at Juan Pierre's most similar players from age 25 to age 32, it's the same guy every time, and he's also a former Cubs center fielder.
So it's not Brett Butler. Cubs center fielder.
I'd give you a hint. I would give it away.
Well, was he a center fielder before or after Pierre was a Cubs center fielder?
Before. For a brief period of time, towards the end of his career.
Toward the end of his career, before Kenny Lofton? No.
Nope. Oh no.
No way. I don't know.
Kenny's stats would not have
Kenny's a borderline Hall of Famer.
Willie Wilson.
Oh yeah. We talked about Willie last week.
So here are the guys. At 23, Juan's, of course you remember these 2 guys. At 23, his most similar comp was Ginger Beaumont. And when he was 24, it was the great Buttercup
These are like white guys from the 19-teens.
Buttercup Dickerson. Buttercup Dickerson was 5'6", 140 pounds. He was born in 1858 in Tyaskin, Maryland.
How the fuck do they have stats that can compare a guy from the 19th century to
played for the Cincinnati Redlegs. He played for the Troy Trojans.
Well, that's original.
The Worcester Ruby Legs. Oh, he played for the Red Legs and the Ruby Legs.
Wow.
The St. Louis Maroons.
Still didn't have to buy new socks. Maybe
the original Baltimore Orioles in 1884.
Ooh, John McGraw and
here's a good team.
Willie Keeler.
In 1884, Buttercup Dickerson played 8 games for the Louisville Eclipse. They went 68.
That's the Louisville Redbird.
Yep. And then he finished up his career with the Buffalo Bison. Buttercup Dickerson. Of course, we all remember Buttercup.
So, what does that say about Juan Pierre?
Yes.
Like a 21st century player.
Well, the first guy, Ginger Beaumont, was born in 1876 in Rochester, Wisconsin, and he played for the Pirates. He played for the Boston Doves, and in 1910 he played for your Chicago Cubs.
Wow, that was a pennant-winning Cubs team. I might add. Lost to Connie Mac's A's in the World Series, but so there's your crossover.
Yeah, Ginger
The Willie Wilson comp tracks because, like a lot of kids, I was a voracious baseball card collector, specifically between 78 and about 85. And I think it was the 80 or 81. I think it was the 81 Willie Wilson. The one that was the ball cap on tops in the lower left-hand corner. But it was a special Willie Wilson card. It wasn't his player card. It was a record-breaking card. And in 1980, Willie Wilson, I believe, set a record for most plate appearances or most at-bats in a season. I kind of screwed it up because I want to say it's at-bats, which would confirm the fact that he never walked.
Willie led in 1980. Willie led the American League, at least, maybe the majors, in plate appearances, 745, at-bats, 705, runs,
40 walks,
133, hits, 230, triples, 15, and he walked 28 times. In
28?
705, in 745 plate appearances, he walked 28 times.
I assumed it was 40 because that was the difference between plate appearances and at-bats, but he may have had some sacrifice bunts and sacrifice flies. So 28 walks, and wow. That totally tracks with Juan Pierre. And it's fitting that they both played for the Cubs at the end of their respective careers.
Willie won a batting title in 1982. Hit 332. This is a legitimately good year. 332, 365, 431.
Yeah. All right.
Started walking. He didn't.
Yeah.
He walked 26 times.
You just got lucky.
You get a lot of hits. You get how many hits? 194 hits.
Okay.
But yeah, that's where they're most similar. Basically, they didn't walk and they got lots of hits.
And they both played for the Cubs.
Yep. Now, what if Juan Pierre had played 10 years earlier, 20 years earlier, and got to play on all those turf fields? He would have been a better player. Would have been a more valuable player.
That's what
would have
made
walked
Wilson's
more,
number.
but his speed would have translated better.
That's a differentiator. You're right.
He had a 1980 skill set, and the Cubs were like, "That's got to be our center fielder in 2006."
We needed center fielders so bad. I couldn't even tell who. So their center fielder in 05 was Patterson, I guess. Right. That was the last dying hope. That was Corey Patterson. So, yeah. The one year of Juan Pierre.
Corey, he had a good year too. 215, 254, 348.
Oh, he bottomed out then. Then we just had to see it.
And that was why they traded for Jody Garrett for 11 games, and then they traded for Matt Lawton
to patrol center field. Jesus Christ.
Matt Lawton for 19 games.
It's such a bleak period of time. Like that. It's like the hangover from Game 6 in 2003. We still talked ourselves up in 2004. They were a better team on paper, but then you just felt something off, and then they proved it. And then 2005 and 2006 was just like this fucking fog of uninspiring trades, and they weren't a shitty team by any means. They were not that good either. Solidly in the middle, and then, like I said, 2006, it just really started to bottom out this season.
Yeah, 66 and 96.
It got bad.
It got so bad that even their stud closer, Ryan Dempster, he had quite a year. He was 1-9 with a 4.80 ERA and 24 saves in 74 games.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was great. As a team, they only had 29 saves. Bob Howery had the other 5, and that was it. Good luck.
Okay. Bob would stick around. He was back in 2007.
Got a good year out of Carlos. 16 and 7 with a 3.41 ERA and 33 starts.
I mean, I'm glad you brought up Carlos. This is pretty much still peak Zambrano. I mean, he's really taken over. He's the most reliable starter. He's all-star quality. Pryor. Oh, here we go. Here's a fun fact. 2006, Mark Pryor threw his last pitch as a Cub. I can tell you without looking it up, it was maybe it wasn't against the Tigers. I think what it was that I was driving home from Michigan down Lakeshore Drive, listening to a Sunday afternoon start against the Tigers. I thought at the time that was his last start, but he got bombed. And I just remember thinking, They don't face the Tigers much. The Tigers went to the World Series that year. They were a good team. Of course, they shit the tub against the Cardinals. Yeah. But, Pryor just couldn't even get out of the first inning, I want to say. I get my internet's hanging, so I can't pull the game up, but I take my word for it.
Who do you think had more home runs in 2006? Carlos Zambrano or Juan Pierre?
Oh, Big Z. No doubt.
What if I told you Juan Pierre had 3 home runs?
It doesn't matter. I mean, come on. Zambrano still, even today, has the most homers for a pitcher of anybody in our lifetime since Wes Ferrell.
This was his best offensive season. He hit 6 homers and drove in 11 runs. Now, he struck out 27 times in 73 at-bats, and he walked once. So his slash line, he hit 151 with a 160 on base, but he slugged 397, which he slugged more than Todd Walker, Ronnie Cedeno, Juan Pierre, Nefi Perez, John Mabry, Angel Pagan, Jerry Hairston, Cesar Asturias, Tony Womack, Giovanni Soto, Michael Restovich.
Tony Womack came back?
And Jose Reyes.
Not that Jose Reyes.
No, not that one. Yeah, Tony came back to finish his career with the Cubs.
Holy shit. No memory of that.
I would guess they got him on. That sounds like a waiver thing. Let's see. 2006. Signed as a free agent on May 18th and was released on June 30th.
Yeah. In my defense, there was at some point in this season where I was pretty checked out. I can assure you.
Do you remember the pitcher that the Cubs made this genius move that I'm sure there's 2006? Was Bleacher Nation around yet? Probably not. But if they were, they would have written, there would have been 15 think pieces about what a great move this was. The year before, the Cubs signed a guy, gave him a contract who was coming off Tommy John disease. A former Astros starter. And he rehabbed the whole year, and then he got to pitch for the Cubs in 2006, a secret weapon. And I got to find him here.
So this is not Scott Williamson when they were trying to duplicate the Ryan Dempster rehabilitative success, which was objectively a success.
This was Wade Miller, who went 0-2 in 5 starts, 4.57 ERA.
Son of a bitch.
The Cubs in 2006, how many games combined did they get out of Kerry Wood and Mark Pryor? I'm going to set the over-under for you at 20. Over or under?
How many what? Did you say
how many games
wins?
Pitched Kerry Wood and Mark Pryor combined?
Just pitched, because Wood was still a starter. He did not emerge as a reliever until 2007. So it was another banged-up year. Without looking it up, can I just say 10?
13.
Yeah.
Wood only pitched in 4 games. Pryor only pitched in 9.
Wow. They all sort of run together, especially Kerry's injuries. It's like,
which injury was this? This was the shoulder, right?
How do you even bother to keep track? This is 8 years after his rookie of the year. I mean, he'd probably spent 1,000 days on the
and
deal.
8 years after his Tommy John disease treatments.
But there's so many others. 2002 was the first year he threw a full season. 2003 he also threw a full season, and then 2004 started breaking down again. I mean, he really only had a 2-year window where he didn't miss a start. I feel like maybe 3.
Well, this was so he gets shut down with the shoulder, and then he shows up in spring training in 2007. And he's so despondent at how he feels that he's going to retire. And tells Hendry that he thinks he's probably done. And he throws the day he's literally going to make the announcement. He throws in Arizona, and his arm feels good. He says he's not going to retire. And he rehabs. He only pitches 22 games, all in relief. And then the next year, he's an all-star. That's the closer.
How about that? That's a cool story. Up your ass.
He pitched for, after he was going to retire at spring training 2007, he pitched into 2012. Although 2012, he basically stole money from the Cubs. But that's fine. He got 2012 most remembered for the emotional hug, him and Ryan Terrio coming off the field. Nope, sorry, that's right. That was Kerry's small son. I always get those two confused.
Nice. Yeah, because of course Ryan Terrio was no longer a member of the Cubs. No, I'm just kidding.
Who did he strike out in his final at bat? Was it It was a white sock. It was
Diane Visaito was his
right.
name.
Diane.
That's
right.
I'm pretty sure it was. It was a nice moment. Otherwise bittersweet. Like
struck him out, and a great
know.
Dale Sveim came out and got him so he could get his.
That's
ovation.
right. Kerry Wood. God, Kerry Wood actually links the 1998 Jim Riggleman, Gary Gaetti Cubs to the Ricketts-owned Epstein Run Cubs. Yeah. That's actually pretty impressive.
Well, I think it was Bruce Miles on this very podcast who talked about how when Theo came, Theo was talking a big game about how we're focused on rebuilding this team and we're not going for cheap publicity stunts and whatever. In the first Cub convention, they announced we're bringing back Kerry Wood.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, okay.
Was 2006 also the year in which former Cubs colorman, future Sox colorman, and at the time a provocative score paid analyst Steve Stone told everyone that Kerry Wood should sell cars if he doesn't think he could pitch or something, and up your ass, he was an all-star the next year, Stoney.
Yeah, we can do a whole remember this crap about what a prick Steve Stone is too. That'd be fun.
I mean, I'll make it fair and balanced because he is the voice of my youth too, but that doesn't make me blind to, even as a kid, the smarminess was on my radar. Like, all right, so like I wasn't 100% in love with him. He taught me a lot, but it was also like, all right, you're a little pedantic, you're a little annoying, you're a little condescending. Jim DeShays has none of that. Jim DeShays is the greatest color analyst of our lifetime.
Oh, better than Joe Carter? Better than Davey Nelson?
Nelson, I was going to say.
But Steve Stone contains multitudes, right? Like, he can be more than one thing. Like, he is a good analyst. He is.
He's a smart guy. College boy. What the
well, some of it is pretty overplayed. Like, I remember as a little leaguer catching on to the, if he bounces the slider here, 0-2's going to strike him out. And he realized, well, yeah, because pitchers try this shit all the time. So that's a pretty safe bet. But he deserves a lot of credit, especially post-stroke, for how he worked with Harry.
Propping him up, absolutely.
Because he got really, and we saw it then with imminent Cubs Hall of Famer Pat Hughes working with Ron Sano at the end.
It's reverse.
The whole
same
time.
Thing. The whole time.
How you can correct an obvious misstatement that your partner made without being a prick about it and without drawing huge attention to it. You could just kind of gently restate what they said only right, and they don't even notice that you're correcting them. And Steve was really good at that and keeping the thing on the tracks. And he's an interesting guy. Is he a lawyer? Did he go to law school?
No, he's a smart guy. He's the second to last 25-game winner. Yeah. Pitched for both the Cubs and Sox.
But you could be all that and still be a prick.
Playgirl.
And he is. Yeah, and he playgirl, and he got me banned from Twitter for 3 days because I posted a naked picture of him. You can't see anything, but you can see he's naked. But you don't see little Steve.
Very eligible bachelor in the 80s. He's still around. I'm enjoying the fact that he's actually seeing 2004 redo. Yep. I've seen some chatter this week. And that let's just bring it back to 06 and his comments on the score where he was very unkind to Kerry Wood, a guy that he had sort of looked over his career since he had come into the league. And I think it was pretty obvious that Stoney had a bit of an agenda because 04, and we'll do a deep dive on this, but just to summarize it, it was a lot of collateral damage from the collapse of 04, and that included the broadcasters. Thankfully, one for sure was Chip Carey, but it was the end of Steve Stone's he actually served in the booth longer than Harry. If you you factor out his fake disease from 99 and 2000, and he
had a lung fungus.
He was blasting
Valley fever's
people.
A real thing.
He was blasting people on his way out of the door of the Cubs. Never came back. He's never been back. He eventually ended up with the Sox after they won a World Series, which is funny. So Stoney's never actually been in town for either World Series team, but he's sort of been pretty installed with the Sox for 15 years. And again, it's the same old shit. He's a good analyst. He's not a dipshit, but he is smarmy. He is pedantic, and it is enjoyable to see him have to suffer, especially because he's gone to great lengths to defend the team, to be that guy that's like everything's fine and stop being such a dipshit. And it's like you're running out of time. So
well, that's a window on Stone too. Like with the Cubs, he was interacting every day with the players who were. That we'll get to 04. There was a bunch of assholes on that team. There was.
Cat Merker, yeah.
And now, who do you interact with most? Because when he does dip his toe into Twitter, it's the fans. And so the players were annoying him in 06, the fans were annoying him in 22, and he lashes out against the people that are annoying. It's like, we just calm down. Everything's going to be great. Is it?
Well, when they make him look dumb, I'm just waiting for him to turn on the socks like he did on the Cubs in 04. So...
I do think he probably... I mean, I don't want to say he wouldn't be doing it anymore, but I think his career was rejuvenated with Jason Benetti. Like,
sure.
He's actually, he likes him. They have fun. I mean, he put up with Hawk for...
Yeah, he was kind of propping up Hawk in the way that Hughes was doing Sano and
right, but
Stoney himself.
Big difference was Stone liked Harry, Pat liked Ron, Stone didn't like Hawk.
Yeah, well, how could he?
He still loves to make fun of the fact that Hawk, remember the time that, what's his name? Frazier. I want to call him Adam, but it's the other guy.
Kelsey. Oh, Adam. Oh, I forget his new name.
Todd.
Or whatever.
Todd Frazier hit by the pitch and had to go down to the clubhouse, and Hawk left the booth to go check on him.
All dramatic.
And Stone is like, apparently Ken has left to go check on Todd Frazier, so I'll just do play-by-play now.
Weirdo.
Yes, what a complete weirdo. Former Little League World Series star, Todd Frazier.
So
not as good as Lloyd McClendon, but
true. Or Daniel Almora. Was that Yankees pitcher or the pitcher that was like 20?
Danny Almonte.
Almonte, yeah. Yankees drafted him. He never made it. I have to cover a couple games real quick, and here's one that happened a week before we're going to talk about the Barrett Pierzynski game, but I just realized it was a week before. I didn't realize it at the time. My daughter, I have to share this personal story. My daughter was born February 7th, 2006, and being a season ticket holder, of course, being a weirdo, my wife and I dragged our daughter to our seats in her baby carriage. She didn't know what the fuck was going on. I don't even think we had to burn a ticket on her. That's how small she was. So we had two other friends in our seats. And I didn't even realize. I knew it was a shitty game. It was on Mother's Day, my wife's first Mother's Day as a mother. And until I pulled it up tonight, I think it's fitting, although the Cubs have since won a World Series, that on this Sunday, Mother's Day, May 14th, 2006, I saw my daughter's first Cubs game was them losing by the same score as a forfeited game, 9-0. And they had two hits. Although I do believe that the appearance by Jae-Cook Ryu may have been his major league debut. I don't know if that's true or not, but
did he pause the game to throw baseballs at an endangered bird?
Not endangered, just one of the pigeons that was on one of the lines that was holding up the screen. So,
you remember who got the hits?
I do not. I was sort of like, nervous dad still, so I was a little distracted, I think.
The guys with the two highest batting averages on the team that day.
Michael Barrett.
Oh, no, Ronnie Cedeno was 288. Todd Walker, 284, playing first base. He got a hit, and Michael Barrett, 281. He also got a hit. Michael Barrett, on that day, was slashing 281, 352, 510.
Well, we could go back real quick because I just remembered another one. Opening day weekend against the Cardinals. Cubs swept the Cardinals. At this point, I've been going to every opening day. It'd been like my 11th in a row. And it was an unseasonably warm April Friday afternoon when they beat him. And then I went back Sunday. Oleg and I were there with two other friends. And Sunday's game was pretty awesome. And I almost, gave 2006 some short shrift. There was a brief hope that the Cubs team would be really good. In that opening weekend, I don't know, 6th or 7th inning, the Cubs are down 3 runs, and Jason Isringhausen, it must have been the 8th inning. Isringhausen comes in. He was the steadfast Cardinals closer, and he comes in with the bases loaded. And the very first fucking pitch, Michael Barrett deposited in the left field bleachers for a lead-changing go-ahead grand slam, and the Cubs had finished the sweep. And we had some high hopes.
Scott Williamson got the win.
Wow. I didn't even know that. I thought his whole rehab experiment was aborted and nipped in the bud. I didn't even know he made it to the Cubs, let alone got a victory.
Jerome Williams pitched in that game.
Oh, Jerome Williams and David Armstrong were the two guys that the Cubs got when they traded. I can't remember it now.
Oh, of course you can. The most popular relief pitcher in Cub history.
LaTroy Hawkins. Thank you.
Famously told George Hoffman, "You can't do my job, but I can do yours."
Ooh,
and he's probably right. That's George.
Well, he's someone. Yeah.
Did you know? I got to double check, make sure I get the country right. That game you were at, you saw a night pitch.
It was a Sunday night game.
You saw a KNIGHT as the starting pitcher for the Cardinals.
Okay.
Sidney Ponson.
Oh, the
Aruba.
Yes.
Had actually been knighted. He was Sir Sidney. Big fat tub of goo. Wow.
Some people have seen Paul McCartney at Wrigley Field. I've seen Sidney Ponson. Take that.
Listed at 6'1", 220. Only off by about 60 pounds.
He was a tubby. That was after because he had a brief run as a good pitcher for the Orioles, right? Ace.
He won 12 games in 99, but he also lost 12. Combined in 03 between the here it was. In 03 he was 14-6. Got traded to the Giants for their ill-fated pennant run, which would crap out in Florida. The series before the Cubs. Sidney went 3-6 with his ERA was bad. 3-6 for the Giants. He then did the thing that nobody ever does. He went back to the Orioles. So the Orioles got the guys they traded for Sidney, and they got Sidney, and then he was bad. So that didn't really work.
That's it.
Hey, Atlanta. Apple is open for small business. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. With privacy and security built in on all devices, it's easy for you to protect your customers' data. And if you need hardware or software support, you'll get advice from business experts at no cost whatsoever. So you can focus more on the soup du jour and less on, the other stuff. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/small business or visit an Apple store to learn more.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kann du Norsk?
If you've had that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
So in that game, you're talking about the Cardinals game where Barrett helped with the grand slam to sweep the series. Probably a high point for Michael Barrett. At that point, been the catcher for 2 years. He had done and said some odd things, and we were starting to get a little suspicious. But then things started to jump the rails on Saturday, May 20th. He did something that some fans will, I don't know. We can talk about it. Maybe we can relate it because even in the Discipio message board, there were two sides to it because a lot of us I was on the bandwagon that Michael Barrett is a stupid fucker. Yes, it's always a good day when AJ Pierzynski gets punched in the face. It's a great day in America when that happens. But in that scenario, he's just a moron. What's the point? It just shows his lack of reading a room. I thought AJ's a dick, but AJ, fair and square, did he knock Barrett over and then brush past him? Because now I'm starting to question exactly how it all went down.
Well, I'm sure we can call it up. What I remember before we look at it is he slid in unnecessarily on the sac fly, got up. I believe Barrett was kind of in the way. He shoved him, and then he was doing the AJ, he's all excited, and he's screaming at home plate. And then Barrett looked at him, Barrett's like, fuck you, and just punched him in the face.
So he didn't even knock him over. He just, fucking made him mad.
Michael Barrett, that comes right up. Michael Barrett punches AJ Pierzynski.
So he didn't have a good baseball reason to do it. He made him mad.
Pretty much. Oh, gonna have a stupid.
Oh, it's Merton.
Jingle.
Merton and Love.
Well, here, wait a second. I'll play it, and then the fans can hear it. The listeners.
Yeah, good idea. I just looked at it. Yeah, it is the first hit.
I'm not going to subject you to the Jake from State Farm commercial that YouTube is playing.
Oh,
for me right now.
I didn't even get that on mine.
Oh, you got the fancy.
It must be.
You paying to not get the ads?
I'm not paying YouTube, so no. I don't know. I just got lucky.
But it's a good one to look for. Got a fastball and lifts a fly ball into short left field.
Tom Brenneman?
Wanting to know, am I going? He is going. Here comes a throw by Merton. It is.
He didn't run into him. Then he
did.
That's the part right there. He heads for him.
And here they go.
After he scores.
Watch John Mabry get his ass kicked in here in a second. That's one thing I remember.
Jerry Harrison running in
yeah. And then Scotty Pod was beating up Mabry or something.
Pierzynski ran right through Barrett.
But Barrett didn't have the ball.
What's going on Freddie Garcia's hair?
And Barrett came after him. Posednik wound up more involved with Barrett than Pierzynski did.
And picked him up.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever.
Now, the residue of this was, of course, they don't do it anymore, right? You don't. After the All-Star teams were picked, they would pick 5 of the people that were snubbed, and the fans could vote one in.
That's right.
And the White Sox got Pierzynski voted in that year with their very creative Punch AJ campaign.
I don't even remember that, but okay.
Yeah, so he ran into Barrett at home plate, collision. But then what pissed Barrett off, Barrett kind of goes ass over tea-kettle. He goes to get up, and AJ has wandered over towards him and shoves him with his... A bit of a dick move, unnecessary, egregious. It would have been fine if he just knocked him over. It wasn't the knocking him over because that was legit. Barrett didn't have the ball, so Barrett should know as a catcher, even though he's dumb, that you can't block the plate without the ball. Yeah, it was embarrassing because it was such a kind of a sad overreaction. But at the same time, everybody should have been punching AJ Pierzynski in the face.
That was my caveat, is that anytime AJ Pierzynski gets punched in the face, it's a good day in America. I just felt, I got embarrassed. And, I was just frustrated, angry. This is when I snapped as a fan. I was already been done with McPhail, and then Fitzsimons was the CEO back then. He was like the whole Jim Dowdle or the Stanton Cook at this point. Fortunately, things did get so bad that they did finally cut the cord, but the Sox were defending fucking World Series champions, and we're still smarting from being 5 outs from a pennant 3 years earlier, and our team sucks, and this happens. And then I just felt, fuck you Sox, that's right. But they were just outclassing them, I felt like. And Barrett, I really started to turn on him. And we for the next year, I think everyone pretty much turned against Barrett until Zambrano pretty much put the punctuation on it about a year later. But if we're going to pile on Michael Barrett, we should also pile on the other dopey white guy from that team, Ryan Dempster, which we're never hesitant to do, because in the rematch, Pierzynski got to just shove it up Cubs fans' hiney again at the rematch in Wrigley. And this was a game I went to. Now, all right, granted, I'm 34 years old. I'm a grown-ass man. I'm not going to apologize for the fact that when Oleg and I were taking the train down there, we stopped at Dominic's to pick up some brown Dominic's grocery bags, cut some holes in their eyes, and bring them for the other 2 guys that we were sitting at. We did not, however, wear those bags. We wanted the Cubs to win, even though they're out of it, but they come into the game on Saturday, July 1st with a 29-50 record. So things had really fucking jumped the rails. Absolutely frustrated with them all. Dusty, McPhail, Henry, Fitzsimons. It's just the fact that they were so close 3 years ago just made it even more pronounced. And I think Maddux was the pitcher this day, but it was a nice, pleasant day at the ballpark. Cubs had the early lead, and they were cruising. And, it was Maddux. No, it wasn't. Yeah, it was. Maddux gave up 10 hits. No walks, though.
He scattered 10 hits.
holds them to 4 runs. And so these brown paper Dominic bags that were under our seats, we're not going to use them. I'm not going to be a dick and start ripping them when they're winning. It's like they have to do something really embarrassing for me to put this on. I'm just being prepared like a Boy Scout. And sure enough, who comes riding in from the bullpen on his unicycle while he's juggling a bunch of golf balls is Ryan Dempster to nail down the save. With the Cubs holding on to a 6-5 lead, but instead what happens, and I don't know if it was with how many outs, were people standing? Were there 2 outs? I don't know. No, there were 2 outs. He gets the first 2 outs, gives up a single to former Cub Ross Glode. World Series MVP Jermaine Dye walks, and then on a 1-1 pitch, AJ, who had already, become the whatever you want to call him, the villain in the north side, hits a lead-changing go-ahead winning home run, as it would prove to be. And it was immediately after that home run that the 3 of us, because one of them was a Sox fan, so we put the bags on my head. That is the story, folks. If you're curious and you look at my Twitter profile at Hugh Cub, that is still my profile picture from this game, 2006, when my really mature 34-year-old ass actually put a brown paper bag on his head. But this team drove me to it.
So now over the weekend, Joe Girardi was the third man in the booth for the Cubs on Marquee.
I heard that.
Jim DeShaze's boog. It was pretty good. It's completely unnecessary, but it was pretty good. Everything on Marquee is completely unnecessary. He got asked by, I guess, Boog about his, did he ever just lose it as a manager? And he said he felt like he only really lost control once. And it was A-Rod's first game in Boston, I guess after his suspension. And Ryan Dempster hit him on purpose.
He missed him the first time,
didn't he? He missed him the first 2 times. That's what a fucking just inept douchebag Ryan Dempster was. And what Joe said, the reason he got pissed was, okay, so he tries to hit him the first time and he misses. He tries the second time and the ump doesn't warn him.
No.
And then he hits A-Rod and it starts the little kerfuffle. And Joe ran out and basically lost it on the ump. Basically this asshole tried to hit him twice and he didn't do anything about it. And you let him hit him. And I love the fact that the story makes Dempster look so bad.
It's a
right
perfect
on his precious
story.
Marquee.
Nice.
So now here's the thing. After Michael Barrett, after that game was on the 20th of May when he punched AJ in the face. Cubs lost 7-0. Great effort, boys.
Yep.
For the rest of the season, at the time, let's see, what was he hitting? He was hitting 286, 357 on base, a 491 slug. Do you think he performed better or worse the rest of the season?
Well, I know because I looked. He led the team in OPS. He performed better offensively.
From May 21st to the end of the year, he hit 316 with a 372 on base and a 527 slug.
He is arguably before Contreras, and even with Contreras, I think he ranks higher OPS. He's one of the best offensive catchers the Cubs had, but he was such a terrible defensive catcher, he's not even in the conversation. No. I mean, obviously Contreras wins it. Jody's the number 2 competitor, but Barrett would be 5th or 6th on the list, even though he has the highest OPS among them because he really wasn't a catcher.
No, he was a third baseman. He was a bad third baseman who tried to make it into a catcher. And because they, for some reason, couldn't go out and find a real catcher. That was Hendry's solution. Now, the Expos, they converted him to catcher. So it's not like they got him and converted him. But the Expos were like, yeah, you can have him. That's fine. Take him.
Right. What did we get for Michael Barrett?
They got Rob Bowen, right?
Well, they traded him. And did they sign him, though? Because I remember, here's the other Barrett.
Oh, who did the Expos get for him?
Here's the other Barrett Pierzynski intersection. It was that you remember that AJ Pierzynski was a promising, proven young player for the Twins who was available after the 2002 season, and the Cubs did not.
Nope. Well,
wait, he went to the Giants
yes,
in 2003.
The Cubs, Hendry tried like hell to trade for AJ Pierzynski. And the Giants
He settled for Michael Barrett.
The Giants made what turned out to be a terrible trade for AJ.
Boof Bonner, Joe Nathan, and the other really good player besides Joe Nathan, right?
Francisco
Liriano. Yeah.
I mean, they gave up way too much for AJ, who flamed out in San Francisco in 1 year. Now, here's where the mistake was. The mistake wasn't when Jim tried to get him. He went to San Francisco. The Cubs needed a catcher again. He's back on the market. And now he's completely devalued.
They had Barrett,
right? They didn't have Barrett yet, right? They didn't get Barrett until they got him after the 03 season. I think AJ's terrible year in San Francisco was 03.
Right, you're right. My bad. You're right.
And
okay, that's the timeline.
He didn't go after him the second time when the White Sox got him for nothing.
That's what it was.
And then he actually turned out to be, good. He was not only was he bad in San Francisco. There's a famous story about he got hit in the balls trying to block a pitch, and the trainer came out, and the trainer's like, "Well, how does it feel?" AJ is now standing up, and the trainer's like, "Well, how bad or how does it feel?" And AJ grabs the trainer by the shoulders and knees him in the balls. He goes, "Feels like that." That's the kind of fucking asshole that we're dealing with.
Yeah. And
now he's so charming. Oh, he does the games on Fox, and everybody thinks he's great. He will always be an asshole. He's an asshole.
But I suggest to you the Dennis Rodman principle. Had the Cubs gotten him and they won, he'd be a hero for us.
Of course he would.
Yeah. I remember wanting him and and then I was like, all right, well, this Michael Barrett's pretty good.
No, you're right. Your timeline was right. Because
but Henry would not have been able to compete, so you can't blame Henry for not getting Pierzynski because
right. He tried to get him, and the Giants gave up way too much for AJ Pierzynski.
Yeah, so that's not Henry's fault. But
he could have cut bait on Michael Barrett after 1 year, and because AJ had been released, the White Sox got him for money. Actually, he could have brought him in. He could have had both of them.
Well, what about Hank White? Come on.
Well, yeah, they could have both sat behind Hank and learned something.
That's right. Hank had to be on the 06, right? He was there forever. Yeah, he was. Of course he was. 261 plate appearances.
He was an all-star that year, I think. Wasn't he?
Barrett must have been hurt because he only had 418 plate appearances.
Yeah, he missed a hunk.
Meaning he did not qualify for a batting title, which meant that the Cubs' leading hitter for players who had the 502 plate appearances would be, in his first full season as an everyday player, Matt Merton, I believe, 297. And nobody hit 135 base hits as softly as Matt Merton did. Something about the way
Hank White hit 266, 304, 419, 6 homers, 37 RBIs, 723 OPS. His 81 OPS plus was his best to date. It was.
Is that right?
But he would top it in 08 with the Cubs, 83. In 09 with the Padres, 94. Culminating in 2011 with the Arizona Diamondbacks, 132 OPS plus.
Damn. How many games? 6?
In 100 at bats. But still.
Well, that's not bad. Hank kept himself in shape, so at some point he was no worse than most backup catchers.
Hank's got 2 World Series rings as a coach.
Yeah.
Cubs and the
Nationals. And it's perfect that he was on the 2016. Oh, he was on the 2019 Nationals, too.
He went with Dave Martinez. He's still there. A lot of great Cubs on this team. I don't know how they didn't win more. Oh, so the Matt Merton thing. I think I'm not to bring it back to Nick Madrigal again, but I'm gonna. Everybody's like, well,
similar.
All Nick Madrigal does, all he does is hit. That's all he does. He hits. His career batting average has never been under 300. It wasn't until Merton's 3rd season as a Cub that his career batting average had spent a single day under 300. And
you mentioned that before.
Just like Nicky Madrigal. And what it is, career ended up. Matt Merton ended up with a career batting average of 286.
Oh, well under.
Yeah.
Sounds like they figured him out. Yeah, his OPS. Granted,
Nick Madrigal, after spending a little time with the Cubs, is now 293.
So Merton had a 908 OPS in that, in an abbreviated 160 plate appearance in 05. But then he had an 809 OPS, even for what I felt was a singles hitter. Pretty good in 06. And then after that, 791, 448, 586, 260. It just fell off a cliff.
It's funny. He was a product of the Peter Gammons Boston hype machine. So like the trade happens and he's a throw-in. He's basically literally a throw-in. Henry didn't have big plans for Matt Merton. He was not the key to any deal, and he goes and Gammons, who has lots of Red Sox connections, is like, hey, the Cubs really got something in this Matt Merton, who the Red Sox were like, what the fuck? Slappy, weird, Opie Cunningham looking dude.
But the context too, I will say that this is early in the sort of Moneyball awakening, for lack of, the book came out in 2002. And, I think people were kind of shifting towards these guys that had good eyes, because his on base was always pretty.
Yeah. Maybe do you think Theo would have given him up if he really thought that was going to turn into something?
Wow. Yeah, because Theo was the guy in Boston. You're right. Oh, he did have a nice year in 2006, though.
Matt Merton was fine. He was literally thrown into that trade, and the Cubs got something out of him, which is more than you usually get out of guys who were thrown into trades.
A 104 OPS as an everyday player in 2006.
He broke in on the same day with the great Adam Greenberg.
Yes, he did.
They were going to save the season.
Yeah, 05.
And
yep.
That didn't happen, I guess. Did they? Did they save the season? No, I guess they didn't save the season.
No, they didn't. But 2006, definitely Matt Merton's finest major league season. So kudos to you ginger-haired bastard.
Let's see. The Cubs went 13-10 in April, fueled mostly by the 9-5 start with Derrek Lee still ambulatory.
Yep.
And then things got kind of bleak. 7-22 in May and 9-18 in June. So 16-40. That's a Jim Riggleman-esque.
That's a stretch.
Crap out.
It's very much like Shades of 1999. That's the anger that I had on my shoulders going to the park on July 1st, and it continued with the dumpster.
There are a lot of fans making a big deal of the fact that the Cubs this year have had a good August. And they're like, signs that this team is really getting good. How about the fact that the 2006 Cubs, one of the worst teams they've ever had, and that's saying something, 96 losses, they went 14-12 in July that year. That was not a sign they were turning anything around. It's baseball, and every team has a decent, even a terrible team has a decent month. That's just how it works. The bad teams can't string them together because they're bad, and that's what the Cubs are right now.
Right. I'm seeing some parallels, actually.
Because really, the problem was they were this bad luck in one-run games. They were 15-26, or maybe they're bad. Maybe that's why they lost one-run games. Because they also lost 20 of their 54 blowouts, or they only won 20 of the 54 blowouts, whatever that is.
Well, and especially without Lee, now I have to circle back because it must have been a down year for our guy at Aramis if Matt Merton was a leading hitter. So, it might have been. I mean, maybe people just packed it in early. It was a dead-on arrival season, so. But I mean, it would otherwise be peak Aramis.
Let's see, who won the Central 2006? Was that a Cardinal?
Fucking Cardinals won it all because the Tigers pitched. That was one of their. The Cardinals have gone to the World Series on 2. This was the '84 win team. This is the team that had like that 10-game losing streak.
You just mentioned the Tigers that threw the ball.
But then, and then just to get there, like they had 83 wins. That's why I'm like, when you're like, well, if the Cubs, I think it was pre-game, pre-podcast.
Yes, it was bitching about how
frustrating the Cubs didn't try.
In a year they didn't try this year so bad, they didn't even pretend.
But I feel like, but for some fucking evil reason, the Cardinals are the only team that capitalized on that. Because usually, if you're a mediocre team that sneaks in the playoffs, you don't go very far.
So the Cardinals,
it's not like hockey.
Cardinals allegedly won the World Series that year. What do you think the Cubs record against the Cardinals was?
Well, they swept them in April, so they might have been a little bit of a pain in the ass for them.
Cubs won the season series 11-8.
Wow, what an anomaly! They did their part at least.
Actually, we should look this up. That one good thing about Dusty is
he always beat the Cardinals. Kind of like loving the Packers.
He was pretty good against the Cardinals.
Okay.
And he was a Cardinal tormentor even before he got to the Cubs. He had knocked them out of the
0-2.
Knocked them out of the playoffs, and they thought they were going to win the World Series that year.
That's right. Okay. I'm all right. A little bit of redemption because we pointed out the same thing for Lovey.
Let's see here. In 2003, Cubs lost the season series 8-9, but of course they had that infamous
4 out of 5
games in 5 days, which this current Cub team couldn't quite duplicate.
No, they won 3 though. No, they won 2. Sorry.
2. They went 2-3. It's
One
better than we thought. In 04, no, I guess, all right, this is apocryphal. Cardinals won the season series 11-8.
So 20-16.
05. Cubs. So the Cubs bad teams. Cubs won that season series 10-6. And then 11-8.
Okay.
And then 11-8 the next year.
26, so 37-35. He had a winning record against the Cardinals.
All right, so he did.
But it was
weird.
Shitty teams.
The years you would have thought the Cubs would have beat up on them, they didn't. The years when they didn't think they would, they did.
And I'm pretty sure the Cardinals were a playoff team all of those seasons except for 03, right? Because 04 they
lost the World Series to the Red Sox.
The Red Sox. And 05 was in spite of Albert Pujols hitting a 900-foot homer off of
Brad
what's his name? Yeah. They didn't go to the series, and then 06 they did. So, yeah, good Cardinals teams, whatever. But, yeah, Dusty did okay. That's a small feather in your cap. Kind of like Lovey still has a losing record, I think, against the Packers, but comparatively to other coaches, he kind of stemmed the tide for a short period of time.
They had that run where they won 10 out of 13 against the...
That's what it was. Okay, yeah, so pretty...
Lovey owned him for like 6 years.
Starting in Yeah, he didn't get swept.
Then it got real bad.
Like 2010, yeah.
10, maybe it wasn't 10. Maybe it's 10-5. Maybe it was over, but it's 10 and something. It's like, ooh, the Bears did that. Yes, for a brief moment, they were competent against the Packers.
So
the Floose is going to fix all that shit. Where him and Ryan Poles are going to take the North. They're not going to give it back. That's what they told me. Take the North. All right. David Howe's on board. David Howe, yeah. Check out that podcast. Tell us how it is, because God knows I'm not going to listen to that shit. Or just stab yourself in the ears. God, I'm starting to look at the roster now. I'm seeing some names. I'll let you do that. Well, of course, John Mabry. Great year. 205, 283. Didn't do a damn thing. Yeah, he was absolutely useless. Phil Nevin put up some huge numbers to get himself traded to the for whoever that guy was with the Twins. He hit 12 homers, 33 RBIs in just 67 games. 274, 335, 497. Good old number 40, I believe, he wore for the Cubs. One of Sutcliffe's was the only uniform big enough he could pull on. True. Angel Pagan. So Angel Pagan, undistinguished player, but then had some like above zero WAR seasons for the Giants a few years later. We didn't think much of him at the time, and certainly not with a small 701 OPS. Not bad for a speedy like center fielder type, but he actually was an everyday player and had a couple of really good seasons later on. He was not still on the team when they won the World Series in 14. He was for part of the season but he was on the 2012 World Series champion. Yeah, Giants. Everyday player. Fucking A. He had 778 OPS. Led the National League in triples that year. In the World Series, he was great. He hit 125. No, I guess he wasn't. Pretty good in the NLCS, though, against the Cardinals. Yeah, well, all right. There you go. Hit a homer. Had a homer in the first round against Dusty's Reds. Oh, played against the Cubs in 16. I don't remember that. Oh, yeah. He was still. Yep. All right. Oh, you mentioned that, I think. All right. Yeah. Well, we didn't think, good for Angel to have a nice career there. Ended up 18 WAR player halfway on his way to Harold Baines territory. But nobody would have thought that Angel Pagan would end up a 16 WAR player in 2006. Now, the great Scott Moore was a 2006 Cub. Our third baseman of our solution at third base in case Ramirez doesn't pan out. Now, the biggest contribution he made was the next year he was part of a huge trade. The Cubs needed pitching in 07. And he got traded with Rocky Cherry for what former great Cub? They brought him back for the stretch run. Craig Monroe. No, pitcher. Right? Oh. And he was so good for the 07 Cubs. I believe he had an ERA of over 8.31. Steve Traxel. Yeah, Traxel. I for some reason I thought Scott Moore got dealt to Detroit. Where he got Tampa Bay? Where did Traxel come back from? Baltimore. Yeah. We talked about the 07, the painful death slog. It was almost similar to 98, where the Cubs just didn't have that much starting pitching, as evidenced by
an aging Steve Traxel just getting lit up he had like 3 starts and just got lit up. So
now one of the marquee guys was reminiscing during the Red Series about, I think it was Pat. Pat was sitting in with Rick Sutcliffe. Mm-hmm. Rick was 3 sheets to the wind as usual. And Pat was talking about the Reds and was talking about how the Cubs clinched the division in 2007.
Yeah.
They won a game, which put their magic number to 1, and then they all hung out in the clubhouse.
We talked about this.
And Pat left out what I thought was the most interesting part of the story.
Well, you remember the Padres, and we needed the Padres and Brewers game to come in.
Yes.
Padres beat Greggy.
Pat told this whole story in great detail and didn't point out the fact that Greg Maddux was the guy who won the game for the Padres that put the Cubs in the World Series.
That one fell into Pat's blind spot. It's a rare miss.
I'm thinking that it's time. I might have to revoke the Cub Hall of Fame for that.
Well, or maybe that's why Crane was having second thoughts and almost fired him on the air.
Well, Crane just handed him the wrong sheet of paper. He meant to hand him his walking papers. Instead, he handed him the Hall of Fame one, and now he's got to pretend he's going to put him in.
Typical Crane.
A scrappy young second baseman shortstop. I guess he'd played a little bit in 2005. He played 9 games in 2005, but he played 53 games for the 2006 Cubs. He would be a huge, important member of back-to-back division champs. Half of the Cajun connection, the great Ryan Theriot.
Yeah. 2008 division-winning Cubs starting shortstop. In case you're wondering why they fell short of expectations.
Back when Henry looked at his lineup or his roster, and he had Ryan Theriot short and went, it's good enough.
Exactly.
Ugh. Do you remember the old chiclet-toothed Freddie Boom Boom Bynum?
Do I remember him? I'm the guy that coined the nickname Piano Keys.
Those are some terrible teeth.
I'm not saying Freddie had big teeth, but he could chew his way through the bottom of a picket fence.
He had summer teeth.
On the other side.
Some are going this way, some are going that way.
Freddie was a middle infielder, corner infielder, just some kind of a weird, flexible guy. I don't know. Maybe hit a homer here or there.
Freddie. He was
Oakland A's, right?
He was part of one of the great trades in Cub history. It's a huge 3-team trade. Listen to the stars in this one. The Orioles sent John Reinecker to the Rangers. The Rangers sent Juan Dominguez to the A's. The Cubs sent John Karanka and cash to the Rangers and got Freddie Bynum.
I remember John Karanka. Andy, do you remember John Karanka? Pretty sure he made his major league debut with a victory in Dodger Stadium at some point. Maybe not his debut. Pretty sure it was a complete game or something like that you would not have expected.
Well, let's look. The year before, 2005, John Karanka. Oh, I hit the wrong button.
What's his game log? But those other 2 guys, I got nothing. But John Karanka, that rung a bell, and it took me directly to Chavez Ravine.
The prospect perverts back in 2005 had high hopes. Here you go. John Karanka, you were so close. It was in Dodger Stadium. It was his major league debut. He got to start against the as he played.
He gave up 18 runs in the first inning.
No, he only gave up 3 runs. He walked 3, struck out 4, gave up a homer. And he only pitched 5 innings, but he didn't get the win.
Wow.
Not quite a shutout.
Right, so he got a win. So no, you didn't do a Sean Bosky
or Jeff Pico. No, he fell far short of Jeff Pico.
Okay, all right, you just got to win.
Well, who did the Cubs see? The Cubs then traded Freddie Bynum because he was so in demand to the Orioles.
Damn it!
Oh, all right.
Is this Patterson?
No, they got Kevin Hart.
Oh,
who would go on to become one of the biggest comedians.
Right.
Oh no, that's a different Kevin Hart.
No, this is the Kevin Hart whom our friend Andrew Peck was such a believer in that he said that Kevin Hart will make us all drink the blood of the non-believers. And he did for a week.
Kevin Hart was then part of a huge trade. The Cubs going for it in July of 2009. They were still hanging in. They were right around first place.
The Milton Bradley Cubs.
And he was traded with the great Ascan, Jose Ascanio, and future 2-time All-Star and current second baseman for the Chicago White Sox, Josh Harrison. And they were traded for the handsome Tom Gorzolani and left-handed reliever John Grabo.
John Grabo, yeah. Wow. That's the Josh Harrison was a Cubs prospect years ago, like the Josh Donaldson, Yeah. But that involved, was that Freddie Bynum, piano keys. All right.
So now the Cubs had that void at shortstop, and they filled it when Scott Boras pulled off a trade to sent his client, Greg Maddux, to the Dodgers for Cesar Izturis, a former Gold Glove winner for the Dodgers, legitimately great defensive shortstop. Couldn't hit for shit. He had won the Gold Glove. How about this? He had won the Gold Glove in 2004. He was an All-Star in 2005, and by 2006, he's a Cub.
And most famously known as a Cub for what?
Massaging Aramis Ramirez's testicles after a home run. It's one of the weirdest.
Well, after one of the most memorable home runs of Aramis Ramirez's career, of Len Casper's call, is one of his best calls. The truly exciting win, and punctuated by Gold Glover Cesar Izturis.
You could literally hear him snapping the Gold Glove on his hand before he went for the old prostate exam.
Emmett Walsh and Pledge, yeah. You use the whole fist there, Caesar?
Let's see. This is great. It's fun to not only find out who the Cubs traded for, but then to see who they traded them for later. Is this legal? They sold him to the Pirates in July of 2007. Just sold. I don't think you could sell.
Wow. How about that?
Cesar Izturis' number one most similar batter for his career is a former Cub shortstop.
Don Kessinger?
Ivan De Jesus.
Oh, all right. That tracks.
Of course, we talked about the great Hank White and his great season. Let's see. Is this the major league debut of scrappy young catcher? No, he played one game in 2005. That's weird. We bring it up for one game. 2006, Giovanni Soto got in 11 games for the Cubs.
No kidding. Okay.
And he would play in 18 at the end of the 2007 season, make such an impression on Lou that he was on the playoff roster.
He was a starter. He hit the big homer in Game 2 that Ted Lilly gave back.
Then he was Rookie of the Year in 2008. And he was terrible in 2009. He was okay in 2010.
And then high as hell for a few years. And
he went to the Rangers and started smoking all the dope.
I think we realized Soto had a better Cub career than we had remembered, because, again, we're reaching that period now, like after 2003 and then 2007, 2008, where I'm kind of dancing in and out. I'm not as fluid, but I was surprised to see it. Soto would actually rank as one of the top five catchers of our lifetime. He played that long. Not that good, but
another scrappy infielder. He had a great baseball name, but he was not a great baseball player. Like, if this guy had played for the Cubs in the 50s, he, of course, would be a legend. Do you remember Buck Coates?
Vaguely. Kind of a 4A.
Buck played in 18 games for the 06 Cubs. He hit a homer, and that's about it.
Good for Buck.
They got traded then to the Reds for the great Marcus Mateo.
Not Juan Mateo, who was a 2006 Cub. Marcus Mateo.
Cubs were trying to hoard all the Mateos. It's foolproof. Michael Restovich played 10 games, and then the other, Jose Reyes, the catcher. Little rounder than the all-star shortstop.
It's amazing that they lost 96 games.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent on this team. Pitching staff especially. Sean Marshall made 24 starts. Now, I don't know if people even know. Cub fans today only know him as the exciting, controversial, will say anything post-game analyst on Marquee. But
yes.
I don't know if people know Sean Marshall actually pitched for the Cubs.
So let's share this quick anecdote. I was also at this game. It might have been I think it was the Michael Barrett game.
Was this the one where he hit the ball off the wall and got thrown out by 30 feet going to second base because he was too lazy to sprint?
I don't think it was that, but how can you get on a pitcher for that? I was thinking it was the same game in which Michael Barrett hit the 8th inning grand slam off of Jason early. I think Sean Marshall started the season in the Cubs rotation, and sure enough, his major league debut was April 9th. And in that game, this is the game that he was losing when he left, and Barrett would hit the grand slam off of Barrett. And so for a brief period of time, we're going to the playoffs. But what stands out about in his debut, They made a big deal out of the fact that Sean Marshall was taken out of the game. I got to see how he pitched because that felt like he was effective. He was nervous. He's pitching against, the Cardinals. And then he comes out of the game, and everyone made a big deal out of the fact that he went to the bench, the dugout, and he sat directly next to Greg Maddux. Oh, look at that guy. He knows where he's going. He's going, which, I think there's a little bit of truth to that, to be honest with you. But, far be it from the media to be the dead horse. They made a lot out of it. But that's a fact. Glad I recorded that for posterity, that Sean Marshall's debut. He didn't even go 5 innings. So it's like a 2020 era start. And he gave up 4 runs. He wasn't even that good. But he sat next to Greg Maddux because he wanted to get better.
So Sean Marshall, in the first half of the season for the Cubs, made 17 starts. He was 5-7 with a 4.80. And then at the All-Star break, he made some key adjustments. Probably got into the 2006 version of the Cubs Pitch Lab, which I would guess was a Polaroid camera on a stick.
Time machine.
And
yes, right.
With some incredible adjustments made by 2006 Cub pitching coach
Larry Rothschild.
Sean Marshall in the second half was 1-2 in 7 starts with a 7.88 ERA.
Oh, much better. Much better. Yeah.
Wow. Sean turned into a very useful left-handed reliever and was then traded for another useful left-handed reliever, World Series hero Travis Wood.
Right. So Sean Marshall is a one Kevin Bacon away from the Cubs World Series team. He was, Travis Wood's a part of that team, and he was traded for Sean Marshall. And Marshall got a payday. He actually may have made an all-star team. Is that possible? As like a reliever, he was never a closer, but I think he got paid at one point. I think he actually had some real value. I think the Cubs traded him high. So for once, but again, that's Theo.
They were acting like big boy trucks. His last 4 years with the Reds, which I would guess is one contract, he made 3.1, 4.5, 5.5, and $6.5 million.
And yet the guy still has to.
Do you remember the other 2 players that the Cubs got for him other than Travis Wood?
One of them would not have been Josh Hamilton, right? No, I'm thinking Cubs Reds.
No, that was
trade.
The other way. That went the other way.
Right.
No, the 2 players the Cubs got. It was Sean Marshall for 3 guys. He was so good. Took 3
Travis
guys.
Wood, and there's no way I'm going to know these 2 guys, right? Would I?
A Nick Madrigal-sized second baseman who played briefly for the Cubs a couple of times. Played for the Yankees. Ronald Torreyes. Do you remember him?
Nope.
And then the great outfielder Dave Sapelt.
I remember Dave Sapelt.
I remember Dave Sapelt. I didn't remember Ronald Torreyes. I mean, I remember Ronald Torreyes. I didn't remember he was in the trade.
I don't remember Ronald.
26-year-old Rich Hill.
He was 26 years old in 2006?
Yeah, well, he didn't break into the big leagues until he was 25, yeah.
Late in 05, I assume.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a regular guy in the rotation and actually put it together in 07 to where he was the Game 3 starter in the playoffs. So we actually not only had an early Rich Hill, but a little bit of a successful Rich Hill.
Rich made 16 starts for those Cubs. And another starting pitcher. Guy made 13 starts. He's one of the Cubs' all-time save leaders.
Brian, no. Wait,
nope.
What?
His
all-time Cubs save.
23 years old in 2006. He was 5-7 with a 4.7 or the 6.08 ERA. He struck out. This should let you know. In 77 innings, he struck out 59 and he walked 59.
Wow. Why can't I? I'm thrown by this whole all-time Cubs saves leader. Subsequent to this, so he debuts.
Didn't we figure out last week that he had like the third? We had the third highest save season in Cub history. Carlos Marmol.
Oh shit, that's right, because he broke in as a starter. Yeah. Well, and I made a reference to the fact that when all was lost, we started seeing guys come up like Carlos Marmol and Juan Mateo, but I wasn't sure if that was 05 or 06. Oh yeah, right. Good old Carlos.
Yeah, Marmol had 38 saves was the most he ever had. But he had he was 4 year span. He had 15, 38, 34, and 20. So he had
for a brief period.
He had 117 saves for the Cubs. I guess that is
pretty good.
One of the all-time.
That's really good. No,
that was more than Ryan Dempster though.
Fuck.
But Ryan Dempster won 50 games and had more than 50 saves, which is really exciting for Crane all the time.
It's such a low bar.
Bob Howry and Stevie Air were both on the team.
I hated Air. I liked Howard, though. Howard
Yeah,
was
I
good
was
with
like
the
Bob.
Cubs.
Was this the year Bob got attacked on the mound? I don't think so. I think that was later.
That was 07. We talked about that. Was the Troy Tulowitzki Rookie of the Year
That's
game-tying homer in the ninth. Yeah.
One of my
20
favorite
years.
all-time Cubs. One of the smartest men in baseball history. And you can tell it just by looking at him. Who I once joked that the Cubs are in good shape in this game as long as the tiebreaker isn't Roberto Novoa competing in a spelling bee. That guy was as blank a face as you will ever see.
Traded for Kyle Farnsworth when we finally had gotten frustrated of Farnsworth's up and down.
Same guy. They traded
right.
white Kyle for black Kyle. That's
with a straight as a line fastball. Like had all the makeup, had all like the scout face. Apex named him Big Spot Bob, and then just as quickly had to rename him Brown Spot Bob.
Because we were talking about which Moore were we just talking about?
Scott Moore, the third baseman. I got traded to the Orioles for Jerry Hairston, I think.
Yeah, Scott Moore. Okay, so different Scott Moore, the guy you were thinking of. The Cubs had two Scott Moores. The year before, the trade was... Oh, I just lost it. It was...
Yeah, because, I feel validated. It was Scott Moore, I was thinking it was a third baseman.
Yes.
In case Ramirez got hurt.
It was Roberto Novoa and Bo Flowers. No, it was this Scott Moore. They got him from the Tigers. That's what it was. Not two Scott Moores.
That's right. I was confused with the Tigers. They got him from the Tigers.
I was thinking, holy shit. All right. So, Roberto Novoa, Bo Flowers, Scott Moore for Kyle Farnsworth. They got three guys for Kyle Farnsworth, three guys for Sean Marshall, three guys for Kyle Farnsworth.
Wow. It's the Larry Himes principle in full effect.
But who was the other Moore? Do you remember the other guy that was like a spring training star, and everybody thought...
Moore?
I thought there was another Moore. This was an older guy. He was super tan.
You sure it's not Scott McLean?
That was it. Scott McLean.
Really?
Yep.
No, I just pulled that out of my ass.
He
was a Cactus League MVP, I'm pretty sure.
Everybody called him Die Hard. That was so hilarious. Clever.
That's right. That's right. I can't believe I pulled that one out of my ass. You wouldn't even, they both start with M. Scott McLean actually fucking played 20 years, 1998 to 2008. No. He did. No, that's not 20. That's only 10 years. But actually, there's not. All right, this is pretty funny. Scott McLean debuts with Tampa Bay in 1998. You were off by 1 year. After a 7-year absence, he plays for the Cubs in 2005.
There we go.
And then after a 2-year absence, he plays for the Giants in 07 and 08. So his career stretches from 98 to 08, but he only played 44 games.
He was Jake Fox before Jake Fox.
I think even Jake Fox was slightly more of a legit prospect. I mean, Scott McLean was fucking 33 years old in 2005 at the Cubs. I mean, he was 26 years old when he finally gets a cup of coffee with the expansion Devil Rays in 1998. 26 years old, plays in 9 games, disappears for 7 years. Comes back as a 33-year-old because of his hot spring training Cactus League, plays in 13 games. And then he sits out 2 more years. He plays 8. He plays 14. He's just dying to stick. He played 44 games in a career that spans from 1998 to 2008. I find that pretty interesting. 10-year career. It's 4 games a year.
2006 would be the second year after a 2-year absence for Will Oman. Will had pitched in 2000, 2001 for the Cubs, missed 2002 and 2003 because of injuries. Came back in 2005 for the one decent year he had with the Cubs, where he had a 2.91 ERA in 69 games. In 2006, he was the Will Oman that we all remember, throwing the 52-foot curveballs.
Right.
78 games, 4.13 ERA. I brought him up last week to Mark Gonzalez, and Mark very nearly passed out from...
I heard that.
It was like, God, don't bring that up. I don't want to remember that.
Hated equally by former Cubs red-ass pitching coach Oscar Acosta and former Cubs manager Lou Piniella. They both hated.
And hated by sports writers and fans. Everybody hated.
There you go.
And he would hang around after he left the Cubs, and he pitched for the Braves in 2008, the Dodgers in 2009, Baltimore, Florida, and he's finished up 2 years with the White Sox. Yeah, they fucking,
I remember he
fucking
pitched for the
deserve
Sox. Everybody has a plan for the White Sox.
2006 would be the final year as a Cub for Glendon Rush. This was the year he almost died in the weight room. I remember that.
Sure.
Kind of a Mike Ditka kind of. I don't remember. He had some kind of seizure or something. And what I remember about it was he came back the next year with the Rockies for opening day, I believe. Maybe it was the Padres. Yeah, the Rockies opening day. And he was standing next to Jason Marquis during the intros, and he got booed. And I was like, this is mean. It was like residual boos from Marquis. And they got under Rush.
Wait. Who booed? They booed him at Coors Field or Wrigley?
No, at Wrigley.
Oh.
Like they were standing next to each other. I'm like, hey, Glendon almost died in this park. You give him, he should get a halfway decent round of applause. But fans were still too excited for booing Jason that they didn't stop for Glendon.
But I'm sorry, what am I missing here? Why were they booing Jason?
They didn't like him.
All right.
Wasn't that he had just left, right?
Fine. Jason Marquis?
Yeah.
Yeah, but he sucked.
That's why they were booing him.
Mostly. He was doing him a favor. Oh, okay. All right. It was like booing Greg Maddux on opening day because he left him butthurt.
Well, it had to be 09.
They booed him because
he booed Glendon and poor Jason. I distinctly remember they were booing Jason Marquis.
That's a good memory because he
was back in town with the Rockies for opening day, and then I remember poor Glendon got booed. I guess he'd been he'd pitched for the Padres the year before, but I don't know if he came back to Wrigley. It might have been his first game back to Wrigley. I just remember thinking it was very unfair to poor Glendon.
Sure.
I believe I saw Glendon Rush pitch in the first game at Miller Park. I pitched against. They must have been playing the Reds because I believe that in the span of 1 week, Sean Casey hit the first home run ever in 2 different parks.
PNC was one of them. He grew up in Pittsburgh.
And then Miller Park.
Interesting. Yeah, and this happened in 2004, but I know that I was at a game. My brother happened to be at the game, and he said it was the best seats he'd ever sat in, like 4 rows behind the Cubs dugout. And he was heckling Jim Edmonds every time Edmonds was on the on-deck circle. He said Edmonds even gave him a look like, if you wouldn't sue me, I would beat the shit out of you right now. Just riding him. Because in that game, Glendon Rush struck Jim Edmonds out 3 times. And so every time Edmonds has to go back to the dugout, my brother, who's like privileged to be sitting in these seats, is just standing up kind of like this. And then sure enough, the next day in the newspaper, we saw a black and white photo of the photographer showing Edmonds walking back to the dugout. My brother's the only guy standing up, kind of giving him the fist. So my brother made sure to get that one framed and hung in his basement. But yeah, Glendon Rush was the guy that struck out Edmonds 3 times to make it all pop.
Here's another guy that I talked about on the podcast with, actually, Mark brought him up last week. We were talking about Cubs prospect Braylon Marquez. Do you remember who he compared Braylon Marquez to?
I heard you guys bring up Marquez, and now I forget who Gonzo.
He compared him to, because Braylon has been this, like, everybody's supposed to be excited about this guy for a long time, and now injuries have got him, and he's not pitching.
I know.
So this long-time Cub prospect finally made his big league debut in 2006. It was Angel Guzman.
That was his debut?
Undeniably, yes, he finally made it in the big leagues in 2006. He was undeniably talented, but his arm would always betrayed him. And he went 0-6 with a 7.39 ERA. He was good in 2007. He had a nice stretch in the bullpen,
I remember.
But his arm fell off. And then in 2009, he had his only sustained success for the Cubs in the bullpen, 55 games, 2.95 ERA, and he never pitched again after that.
Yeah. We had our hopes up for Angel.
Steve Stone loved Angel Guzman. And figure that Stone left in 2004, and he'd been talking him up in like 2002 and 2003, and he didn't make the big leagues until 2006 because of all the injury.
But he was on our radar in 2004 for sure, not just Stoney's.
The aforementioned David Ardsma, 45 games, won 3 of them out of the bullpen, 4.08 ERA. Juan Mateo, 1 for 3, 5.32 ERA.
Big Juans.
The sad end of Mark Pryor.
Yep.
9 starts, 1-6, 7.21 ERA. 38 strikeouts and 28 walks in 43 innings.
He did not have the colorful personality of Mark Fidrich, but I always come back to that being the comp. I know there are different circumstances, but it's like takes the league by storm. Pryor's run was a little bit longer, but it really was just a couple of years.
Mark Pryor finished his Cub career 42-29 with a 3.51 career ERA. Struck out 757 men in 657 innings, walked 223. And he really
those rate stats.
The
rate stats are incredible.
He did it. Most of that is built out of his second year. He was good as a rookie, 6-6 to 3.32 ERA. Then 18-6. And then his stats are good in 05, but he was already a shell of himself. 11-7 with a 3.67 ERA. We never.
Yeah, and that
only
Tigers
got one
game
full
I
year out of him ever, and it was great.
Pretty much. That one, what I thought was his last game was actually his first game of the 06 season when he got his shit rocked against the Tigers, and but he only made, you already pointed out, nine appearances.
I remember the one
started them all,
and I know what I'm going to look quick. I remember one in Minute Maid Park, where
I see it now.
Where it was
6 innings. Well, he didn't pitch bad. Now, if it was 06, he actually was one of his last decent performances.
Yeah, is that the one though? I think the Cubs were winning, and he gave up. Was this the one with the grand slam?
Against Mike Lamb?
No, I don't think it is.
That game.
It must have been a previous year. He had one game. It was just the balls were rocketing all over, and then somebody hit a grand slam, and Dusty finally went and got him. It's like it's about fucking time, Dustbag. That was a previous. Well, let's see. Did he make another? Yeah, because he only started against them once that year, so it wasn't that game.
Not in Minute Maid. He didn't make that many starts. What a weird, sad end. It was like his last start was August 10th up in Milwaukee in 2006. 5 years earlier, he'd only been signed by the Cubs, and think of the whole trajectory that he would have in those 5 years. He'd go to the heights of practically pitching this star-crossed franchise to a long-lost pennant, and then never threw a pitch again after August 10th, 2006.
That's his final start, but this is a tough Brewer lineup to navigate. Brady Clark was in center field. Then Jeff Sorello and Prince Fielder. Kevin Mensch with his size 12 head. Gabe Gross. Tony Graffinino was the shortstop. David Bell, the third baseman. Mike Rivera was the catcher. How are you supposed to get those guys out? I mean, that's just tough luck.
Good point.
Brady Clark. Jesus.
Well, we can talk more prior since 2004 is still sitting out there. We will.
Mike Wirtz had a good year. 2.66 ERA, 41 games.
He was effective.
He only had one pitch that worked. It was a slider. And when teams stopped swinging at it, that was pretty much the end of Mike Wirtz, but he was good there for a while. The aforementioned Scott Williamson. Was this it for Scott?
Well, he won that one game that we referenced.
No, he latched on with the Padres for the rest of the year and then finished up in Baltimore. Everybody went to Baltimore. That's not a good sign for Baltimore.
It's true. Jerry Hairston, Corey Patterson, Sammy Sosa.
Scott was. Oh, the Cubs traded him. Huge trade for Fabian Jimenez Angulo and Joel Santo, Ron's kid. Is that right?
Yeah.
No, maybe not.
I think so. He made the movie.
Should have been.
This
Even if it's not. Yeah, this whole guy was right. He had the video camera and he was.
That's right.
Wade Miller, Kerry Wood. Oh, remember Les Walrond? Good old lefty.
Black guy, right?
Yep.
Yeah. They've had two guys. Dave Chappelle's the other. Two guys who
you simply described as black guy? That's good.
Reggie Cleveland, reverse Reggie Cleveland All-Stars, where those are very white names, I feel like. Maybe not. Les Water. But yeah, I do remember. That's 17 innings.
You talked about Jay Cook-Rue.
I did.
And then Jerome Williams.
From Hawaii.
Pitched in 5 games for the Cubs that year. And then a guy that we need to talk about. He's famous. He only pitched in 2 games ever for the Cubs. But people of a certain age remember who he is. And
you know what?
An emergency start in Minute Maid Park, right? Yes.
Yeah, and here I am talking about John Karanka's replicating a Sean Bosque or Jeff Pico from the year before when he only went 5 innings. Clearly, I was thinking of Ryan O'Malley, who had a similar. That was a debut, right?
Yes, his major league debut. He only pitched in 2 games ever. August 16th, he had to drive from Des Moines or some shit to get to Houston.
Was it Round Rock?
That's right. I think you're right. He was the Cubs. Somebody crapped out, and they needed a starter. And they tabbed Ryan O'Malley, and he pitched against the defending National League champions, the Houston Astros.
A good team.
In a lineup that had Lance Berkman
in their home park,
and it looks like Jeff Bagwell took the day off, but Beige didn't start either. He pinch hit. The lineup might have been a little easier.
Okay, mitigating circumstances here,
but still, Ryan O'Malley, 8 innings, 5 hits, 2 strikeouts, 6 walks.
Wow!
But he didn't give up an earned run. Didn't give up a run at all.
Flashing the leather behind him.
And he outdueled Andy Pettitte. Andy Pettitte pitched 9 innings, complete game, 4 hits, 1 run, but he was no match for Ryan O'Malley in a 1-0 Cub win. Bobby Howery got the save. And that propelled the Cubs right back into the pennant race at 52-68. Hey, the Astros were bad. 57-63. Is that one of the years that Bagwell caught a fastball with the back of his hand? Maybe not.
Could have been. Yeah, I want to say that was a day game too. A rare day game in Houston.
It was a Wednesday. It was a getaway day.
Yeah, getaway day.
106 start in Houston on a Wednesday. 38,989 showed up, mostly Ryan O'Malley fans, I think. It was a late arriving crowd because he got there. So then, Ryan said, "Hey, we got something here," and he made another start on August 22nd against the Phillies, and he went 4 2/3, gave up 3 runs, and then he never pitched the big leagues again.
Did he pull a Dave Dravecki? It's just strange.
His arm fell off. I think maybe he did get hurt in that game.
I think he did. He had to have, and then just never got a chance again. God, the rest of that season's a blur. I mean, it was just such a depressing. I guess too the reason I'm not remembering anything after July. I remember O'Malley's game. I don't remember what else I could. I just remember what the T-shirt says. By the way, you can get your Discipio merchandise at the store. But I'm wearing "I just want this to be over." Wilson Contreras' quote, totally applicable in 2006. I wanted it all to be over. I think I was still writing then. I was doing some screeds, the case against Andy McPhail, get rid of Fitzsimmons. It was just done with this. And
you also mentioned Dennis Fitzsimmons like 15 times this podcast.
I'm telling you, man.
I barely remember that asshole.
Well, he was the suit and tie that was in charge of that ultimately made the decisions, like after Stanton Cook and Andy McKenna before him. He was the last. He was the last of the mediocrity by design managers is really what it was. And we got our wish. The other thing though is that it was easier to peel off of the Cubs because in 2006 the Bears had a rare window where they were good. So as soon as the football season kicked off, I don't think I watched any Cubs baseball the month of September that year. Except when Andy McPhail got fired and Simmons got ran out at the end of the season, I had hope. And the hope was rewarded because they did bring in a bit of a new regime and they started spending money again.
All right, do you want to hear the story of Ryan O'Malley?
What is the story of Ryan O'Malley?
So he was good friends with Rich Hill, pitching in the minor leagues for the Cubs. But a call up to the big leagues for Ryan O'Malley was extremely unlikely, except on a Tuesday night in Houston, the Cubs and Astros went 18 innings. And Dusty had to have Rich Hill pitch the final 2 innings of the game. That meant the Cubs needed an emergency starter, and because you were right, because the Iowa Cubs were in Round Rock, and it was Ryan O'Malley's turn.
Wow.
Actually, this is even better. Ryan O'Malley was supposed to start on Tuesday, but the Cubs sent Wade Miller there for a rehab start and pushed O'Malley back, which meant he was then available. So the 26-year-old hopped in a limo. The Cubs spared no expense. And tried to catch a few minutes of sleep in the back seat on a ride from Round Rock to Houston. He had no idea until he got to the park that he was going to be matched up against Andy Pettitte.
Jesus.
O'Malley was oddly a bit wild that Wednesday, but he was just effective enough. He credits Michael Barrett, a catcher with whom he'd never worked, for helping him through it. Nibbling the corners and not giving in to Astros hitters, O'Malley finessed his way to 8 shutout innings. I guess we know why so many of the Astros got the day off, considering their record was shit and they played 18 innings the night before.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting.
So,
wow.
Then he made his next start. O'Malley pitched well enough against the Phillies, allowing just 1 walk, giving up 3 runs in 4 2/3. But in the 5th, he felt a twinge in his left elbow. I didn't feel anything until there was a ball that had a scuff, and I lobbed it back to the great Henry Blanco. At that point, I was like, oh my God, what's that in my elbow? I'd never felt that before. And he said, no way am I coming out of this game. It's my Wrigley Field debut. The next pitch he threw would be his last. Blanco immediately knew something was wrong, and at that point, O'Malley had no say in the matter. He was pulled from the game, wound up on the disabled list, and his left arm fell off. Yep, he did. He caught Dave DeBecke disease. His left arm fell off, and he's now a former lefty. So that's why that's why we go through the tortured exercise at the end of these, where I go down every player in the roster, because we would have forgotten. He was the last guy listed on this roster. We would have forgotten Ryan O'Malley.
It provides some much-needed backstory. I think most Cub fans of most ages remember that game that we talked about, and I think for most of us in the fog of our memory that there is that sort of anecdote that you pulled out. So yeah, absolutely. We've breathed life into it again. So,
but now before we go, I want to look at the game before that.
The Cubs swept that series,
18-inning affair.
I wonder how many saves the Cubs blew. I bet you at least 2.
They had a 2-0 lead after 2. It was tied in the 4th. Then they took a 5-2 lead. But then the Astros went up 6-5 in the 6th. The Cubs tied it in the 9th. Who was the clutch player here? This is going to be exciting. In the 9th. Matt Merton hit a homer off Brad Lidge.
Whoa.
Probably just like the Albert Pujols one.
It just is shocking.
And then nobody scored.
Well, Lidge was still supposedly dealing with the post-Pujols trauma, although he would come back to win the World Series with Philadelphia, so some of that's bullshit.
Nobody scored until the 18th? Nope.
Yeah, I see that. How about that? Man, pitchers just throwing blanks. Our guy, Angel Guzman, threw 3 innings. Dempster threw 3 innings.
Phil Garner had to throw the great Dave Borkowski out there and just let him ride. Borkowski pitched, Jesus.
Oh, my God.
He pitched
6 innings.
He came in the 13th and he pitched 6 innings.
Wow.
Jesus. So a little pooped in his final inning. And Matt Merton got him again. Ramos singled. Ramos doubled. Okay. Jock singled. Didn't score Ramos. Mabry fouled out. Ronnie Cedeno grounded out. They intentionally walked Michael Barrett to load the bases, and Merton made him pay. The base hit, scored 2. And then Rich Hill was still in the game, and he went 1-2-3 in the 9th. Got a save. No, he got the win. He got the win because he was already.
He got the win. He was it for himself. Yeah, and also a game in which Roger Clemens started. So there you go, another Hall of Famer.
So they beat. Yeah, so they beat Roger Clemens and Andy
Clemens and Pettit. All right, the Cubs. They came into the series 49-68. They were not good. Changes were on the way.
Good Lord, everybody played. Carlos Zambrano got to pinch hit. Carlos Marmol got to pinch hit. Oh. That was beautiful. Although wasn't Marmol a converted catcher? I think maybe
he was. That's a good call. I forgot about that. You're right.
Let's see. Pitching for the Cubs. Oh, so on back-to-back days, the Cubs won a game against Roger Clemens, started by Juan Mateo, and Andy Pettit started by Ryan O'Malley.
The plan works.
Mateo, Oman, Wirtz, Ardsma, Air, Howry, Novoa, Guzman, Dempster, and Hill. Jesus. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pitchers. The stupid Sporting News thing said 6. They were off by 4. 10 pitchers.
This is a lost franchise.
There you have it, the 06 Cubs. Woo.
Yeah, enjoy it, kids. Hope we gave it whatever justice it deserved.
Thank God Dusty won that game where he got to use 10 guys in August when they were 30 games out of first. Attaboy,
Yeah.
Dusty.
And Dusty did not get fired. His contract simply expired at the end of the season.
That's right. Dusty's never been fired.
That's true.
But he's had his contract not renewed several times by the Giants, by the Cubs, by the Reds, by the Nationals. But never been fired.
It's quite a run.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Andy.
Many of us have herpes.
I just want this to be over.